Earlier this year, we had taken a look at the 2022 Infiniti QX50 Autograph, which is the top trim in the QX50 lineup. I found this vehicle to be very family-friendly, practical, and a suitable daily driver for a lot of Americans, even though the powertrain is paired with the CVT. Today I'm sitting next to the 2023 QX50 Sport. This is an all-new trim for this model year, but also there have been some minor changes and some minor tweaks for 2023 that maybe adds a new value proposition to this crossover. And in this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the 2023 QX50, check out what is new for this all-new trim, and also see why, if you are looking at buying a QX50, you might find the Sport trim to be the best bang for your buck. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Infiniti of Norwood in Norwood, Massachusetts for allowing me to do this review. I also want to thank Adam, who's the general manager at Infiniti of Norwood, for inviting me down here to check this vehicle out. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Infiniti inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. In a segment with established manufacturers who've continued to build off legacies that span a number of decades, Infiniti has begun to take steps in a whole new direction for their brand and lineup, as the 2020s have become pivotal to their reemergence, especially in the luxury crossover markets. The all-new QX60 set the tone, but also raised our expectations, as they've demonstrated the ability to craft and engineer an SUV Americans can gravitate towards. The QX50, despite being the most affordable crossover in the lineup, has been overshadowed for some time, for reasons mostly centered around the transmission Infiniti uses. However, with the introduction of the Sport, it's possible that it could appeal to new consumers. Starting off with pricing, the all-new Sport model comes in at just over $50,000 to be the mid-tier trim for the QX50, and it's the price tag that actually plays an integral part of the value proposition, as the dynamic looks is just the visual element to a crossover that just might be the pick of the lineup. While some changes were made for 2023, exterior dimensions wasn't one of them, and despite the appearance of being sportier and slightly more compact than rivals in this market thanks to aerodynamic body lines, the QX50 falls right in line with its closest competitors at 185 inches in length and having a width of 75 inches. For ground clearance, you'll have 8.6 inches, which is more than enough to take on unplowed roads during the winter. And this adds to the deception of the road presence, and that does outclass crossovers such as the Acura RDX and even the Audi Q5. As we had seen with the QX60 earlier this year, Infiniti is beginning to trim down on the usage of chrome, as the Sport model reinforces that notion, as gloss black accents brings a lower profile and modern look to this crossover. At first glance, you'll probably recognize that the front fascia is slightly different than what you'll find on other trims, and in fact, it's the same front end from the QX55 that adds athletic and eye-catching cosmetic features to really set this model aside from the others. The aggressive front bumper and repositioned fog lights is a facelift that we wish was present for other QX50s as well, and providing better visibility at night while also making this crossover looking up to date are full LED headlights. Moving over to the side profile, the Sport will be sitting on 20-inch black painted and machine finished wheels that's also shared with the QX55. Even with the larger tire size, ride quality doesn't get diminished, and it could be argued that Infiniti offers the most comfortable suspension in this segment, to hammer home that the QX50 deserves to be in the same conversation with crossovers such as the Volvo XC60 and even the new Lexus NX. You'll have body color matching folding side mirrors with turn signal indicators, to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Then coming around to the back, the blacked out badging and color contrasting accents completes the full removal of chrome on this QX50, including the dual exhaust outlets. I'm not afraid to admit that I spent a few minutes longer than I had to staring at the LED taillights, as there does appear to be a very minor tint compared to the Autograph that was filmed last year. And whether it be anecdotal or not, the presence of sportier aesthetics does go a long way in reviving the excitement for Infiniti's smallest crossover. Under the hood, the Infiniti QX50 Sport is powered by a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that produces 268 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, and is paired with a CVT, which is the only crossover that utilizes this transmission rather than a traditional automatic. Despite the negative attention in regards to the CVT, the QX50's power delivery is impressive, with a 0 to 60 time of around 6.4 seconds, and due to its high amount of torque, this vehicle is quite peppy, offering more than enough performance to get around slower drivers or entering highways. As with other trims in the QX50 family, front-wheel drive does come standard, but for an additional $2,000, all-wheel drive will increase the capability when taking on snow-covered roadways. For fuel economy, you're looking at right around 22 miles per gallon in the city and 28 miles per gallon on the highway. Stepping inside, the Sport trim can be equipped with Monaco red semi-aniline leather seats, which are heated, ventilated, and power adjustable for both the driver and passenger. Infiniti's bread and butter is their comfortable interiors, as these seats are supportive with strong bolstering, but the high-quality upholstery certainly elevates the driving experience and lets you know that the QX50 is in fact a luxury crossover. In front of you, between the analog gauges, there's no changes for 2023, as you have the same digital display as last year. And from this screen, you can scroll through a long list of information, including the safety systems, fuel economy, and tire pressure monitoring. Then moving over to the dual touchscreen setup for the user interface, up top will be home to the navigation system, but more importantly, for those not looking to purchase an Autograph and you prefer saving where necessary, the Sport does give you a top view, side view, and front-facing cameras in conjunction with the rear backup camera with trajectory. This alone is a great feature, and one of the key factors that makes the Sport a very appealing trim for the QX50. The second touchscreen will be the main head unit, and it's here where you can access a number of different menus, including the driver assistance features, but you can also personalize your driving experience so you won't have to exclusively be in Eco, Normal, or Sport. Mounted on both sides of this screen will be the buttons for the dual zone climate control, AC, front and rear defrosters, and 3-level heated and ventilated seats. Then beneath the screen are quick access buttons for the audio, climate, and home menu, but you also have a physical dial for the volume as well. Another standard feature for the Sport is the 12-speaker Bose sound system to improve the audio of your favorite music. Then moving on to the center console, standard will be a wireless phone charging pad, and to the right is a USB-C and USB input. Next to the gear shifter will be the dial that controls the navigation map, and you can also monitor your camera systems when the QX50 isn't moving. Compared to last year, the gear selector itself has been updated following in the footsteps of the Nissan Rogue, which saw the same minor facelift last year. And the center console will also be home to your drive mode selector for when you want to maximize the performance or fuel efficiency of the QX50. For the center storage compartment, there'll be enough room for a smartphone and loose change. And rounding out the front seating area, above will be a panoramic moonroof, which does come standard to bring in a lot of natural light to the interior. Now moving on to the second row, we're going to start off on the passenger side. And this seat has been adjusted as far as it can go back. It's also somewhat on a recline, and as you can tell, I have little to no room. But I'm doing this for demonstrational purposes because, surprisingly, for a two-row crossover, these seats are on rails. You can slide them forwards and backwards to give you a little extra space if someone on the height of 6 feet tall is sitting in front of you. But better yet, you can also recline these seats as well by about 10 to 12 degrees, allowing you to really relax and enjoy the driving experience while your driver is dealing with the horrible commuters that are out there on the roads these days. But also, on those longer drives, with the semi-aniline leather seats that are plush and supportive, you can have no care in the world. You can also probably take a nap back here too. So that's really great to see. Now, of course, I'm not the tallest person out there. I'm around 5'5", so keep all of that in mind. I do think if you're on the height of 5'8" or 5'9", you should be more than comfortable back here for sure, especially since you can recline the seats. You won't need to worry about hitting your head on the headliner. Now, moving on to the center seat. You do have somewhat of an aggressive center hump, but there are some great placements for your feet. I just don't think for a crossover in this market and of its size, you can fit a third person back here practically and comfortably. That's just my take. Although on a shorter drive, you can probably fit a third kid back here. Now, of course, I would say that for a lot of crossovers in this market, so this is not exclusive to the QX50. I just think that if you are looking for more family-friendly crossover that you need to have that extra space for that third child or that third person, you might want to upgrade to the QX60. And then on the driver's side, the seat is adjusted a bit further up, and I have a lot of legroom here, but also I want to recline again just to relax. So you have a lot of interior spacing, you have a lot of interior comfort, and that right there is why I think that's a great family-friendly crossover. Also back here, you do have two rear air vents to go along with the USB-C and USB input. For higher trims for the QX50, you can get 3-level heated outboard seats and also climate control. So if you want those extra creature comforts, you're going to want to go with the Autograph or the Sensory. And rounding out the second row seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Now coming around to the back, you're going to receive a power liftgate. And inside, behind the second row seats, you're looking at right around 31.5 cubic feet of room, which will outclass many in this segment, including the BMW X3, which is one of the more spacious crossovers in this price range. If you do prioritize interior spacing and overall practicality for your daily driver, then the QX50 has to be on your list of considerations, even if you don't like the performance and the CVT. Now, if you are going on a road trip with the family, I think you could definitely fit 5 to 6 bags of luggage back here, no problem. Also, you could probably fit some small furniture as well if you are moving. Then with the second row seats folded, you're looking at right around 65 cubic feet, which is a bit of a surprise because from the outside, the QX50 does look rather small with the lower roofline, but also it looks smaller compared to the Volvo XC60 and that BMW X3. And really one of the selling points for this model is the overall interior spacing. So I think that's one of the reasons why the QX50, in my mind, is a great option if you are looking for a crossover at around $50,000. Then on either side of the rear cargo area, you will have quick release latches to conveniently lower the second row seats, so that way you don't have to manually fold them. Then beneath the floor mat, you will have additional storage for some smaller items, such as maybe a couple water bottles, car detail equipment, or first aid kit, so that way they can stay safe and secure as you are traveling on back roads or maybe on the mountain roads when you are skiing and snowboarding during the winter. And then once you're done, just press the button and the liftgate will close automatically. Without question, Infiniti's strong suit is their interior quality, interior refinement, and really the plushness of the ride quality. You can say whatever you want about the performance and how it has a CVT, it's not the most athletic or sports driven. Yet, if you're looking for a vehicle that is comfortable, that's practical, but also somewhat upscale, the QX50 I think is a great option. Sure, you're going to hear the droning of the CVT, but when you take a look at the softest materials on the dashboard or the armrest or the semi-aniline leather seats that provide a good amount of bolstering and support, it is a bit of a surprise because Infiniti does get overlooked in this segment for sure. I think a lot of it is on the performance end rather than its interior spacing and overall practicality. And honestly, I think when you take a look at what this vehicle is offering from a comfort and luxury aspect, it's a surprise for sure. Now let's get on the highway here. Let's see how the QX50 performs. A good amount of torque right there. And compared to other CVTs, I think it mimics the gear shift quite nicely. Reminds me of the Subaru Forester and Subaru Outback in that degree or in that regard. You don't really hear that much droning, especially in standard mode or normal mode. Sport mode, let's actually put that in sport mode, see what it can do. And it does really bring some life to the engine, but it's not going to really turn this crossover into a dynamic vehicle by any means. The steering does stiffen up a bit. Also, throttle response is a bit more immediate than in standard mode, which is to be expected. And at highway speeds at around 60, 65 miles an hour, ride quality isn't that bad. Very smooth, feels planted to the road. Also, not a lot of road noise either. The interior is very well insulated. I think most of the noise is coming from the tires, if anything. But it does have a nice composure on the roadways. Let's see what the handling and cornering ability is like in sport mode. I do like the brake feel. Very strong braking. Some droning there and some body roll. But I like the feedback in sport mode. It gives you some weight to it. And I can easily merge onto the highway. The 268 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque is actually one of the more powerful powertrains in this segment, which is a bit of a surprise. You don't look at Infiniti as being a performance-driven brand, at least for the QX50. And yet, you're going to have that confidence to get on the highway, and you can pass lower drivers with ease, but also you can get yourself out of trouble, even with that CVT. But personally, I think what Infiniti has done for 2023 is really give this vehicle still that luxury appeal, where you have the comfort that you're looking for at around $50,000, while also adding sporty aesthetics, which really is missing for the QX50. I wish we would see the sport fascia across the entire QX50 lineup, although then you'd probably wonder why would you go with the QX55, although we do see similar styling cues when you look at the Q5 and the Q5 Sportback. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we could see the sport fascia make its way for other trims as well. But I do like the character that it gives this vehicle. It has a bit more of an aggression to it that maybe the regular Infiniti QX50 just doesn't offer. It does fly below the radar, whereas this has that nice dynamic presence to it. Now, getting into overall vision for the Infiniti QX50, a nice panoramic view. A-pillars are somewhat aggressive, but they're not so aggressive where I feel as though you're going to have a blind spot when you are approaching intersections. Then taking a look at your side mirrors, they are rather big and they're perfectly placed, so I can't see what's in my blind spots. Also, what I love about Nissan and Infiniti products is that the blind spot detection is on the A-pillar itself rather than the mirror. I'm not a huge fan of having that icon on the mirror. Then looking out back, even with the smaller window, since the QX50 has more of a sportier look to it, you can see everything behind you, even with the headrest in the way, so that's really great to see. When it comes to seating position, you do sit pretty high up, but what I do like though is that you don't feel as though you're sitting on top of the vehicle. Instead, it feels as though you're sitting inside the interior. You're part of the cabin, which I really like. It adds to the safety and security of being behind the wheel because the dashboard does wrap around you, nice wide center console, and that really adds to the luxury aspect. So let's analyze the interior layout one more time since it is the same for 2023. We have the dual touchscreen setup, which a number of people don't really like just because it does look a bit outdated and old. However, I love the fact that I have Waves running at all times, and then I can access the radio, the climate control settings, the driver assistance features, and also even customize my driving experience without having to lose the navigation screen for a couple minutes if I am in the menus, which I find more intuitive and easier to use compared to some of the competitors that have now moved everything to the main head unit, even the climate control settings, whereas with the QX50 and the QX55, all the buttons are mounted on both sides of the screen, which I think a number of buyers right now still love, even though we have millennials that are getting into the technology and they prefer having a more in-depth user interface, whereas I think for buyers who are looking for an old school layout and a traditional layout, they're gonna love this setup. At least that's what I think. But ultimately, after spending a few hours with the QX50 once again, I'm just going to reiterate what I said back in February, and that is that this crossover is all about the interior quality, interior refinement, practicality, interior spacing, but also having a plush ride quality. There's not a lot of crossovers in this market that mimic the QX50 in that regard. I would say the Volvo XC60 would be the class leader, and that's very high praise for this crossover. I do think though that it boils down to the CVT that's paired with this turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, because with 268 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, you have plenty of performance. I just think that if we got the 9-speed automatic that we see with the QX60, this vehicle would be an overnight success. I think we would see a lot of people gravitate towards this crossover because, one, you have the interior plushness, you have the interior spacing that does outclass and outsize rivals. But then if you gave us that traditional automatic, now you have a vehicle that probably feels as sporty and as dynamic as an Alfa Romeo Stelvio or even a BMW X3. That, I think, is the only thing that's holding back this crossover. But to be brutally honest, I really don't have any complaints here for this vehicle as a daily driver, because when it comes to suspension, very nice. You go over the bumps, you don't get thrown around, you barely feel them, which some crossovers in this market with the sports tuned suspension, that's a whole different story. But also, the interior is very quiet. The sound deadening is certainly on par with its closest rivals. But then also, I think as a family-friendly crossover, it has that down pat, since you do have the ability to slide the second row seats forwards and backwards and have them recline. So if you can overlook the CVT, if you can overlook the droning of that transmission and the engine, I think you're going to love what the QX50 is offering, especially now with the sport trim, where it definitely looks more aggressive. So to wrap up my time with the all-new sport trim, is this the pick in the QX50 family? I personally love the features that come standard on this model, such as the top view camera, the front-facing camera, the side view, also heated and ventilated front seats that have leather upholstery, which feel very premium. Also, the massive panoramic moonroof, and across the board for 2023, you have the wireless phone charging pad and also the heated side mirrors. And when you factor this all in at around $50,000, this is about $10,000 more affordable than the Autograph. Sure, you miss out on heated rear seats and also 3-zone climate control, but you're still getting the interior quality and the plushness that you have with the Autograph. Also, what I like too is that from the exterior, you have a more unique front fascia from the QX55. Also, the blacked out badging adds a lot of character to this crossover from the outside. It looks more eye-catching and more dynamic. And when you take a look on the inside with the red contrasting leather, it just really makes this vehicle look upscale, even though I think a lot of people are going to say, I don't like the infotainment system, or I wish we had a full digital gauge cluster. But who knows, maybe within the next 2 years we see Infiniti do a full refresh on this model and we get the same treatment that we now have on the QX60. What I also like about the sport trim as well, and there's a very minor detail but does speak to me as an enthusiast, is the carbon fiber inlay that's on the dashboard and the door panels. It just adds a sportier vibe to this model. But ultimately, I think I'd be buying this crossover for its practicality, its interior spacing, and also the plushness as it goes over the bumps and imperfections very well. The suspension is very forgiving. And if you are looking for a crossover that's family friendly, I think the QX50 should at least be on your list of considerations when it comes to just the quality of the environment that you find yourself in when you get behind the wheel. But with the sport trim, it adds a whole different dynamic where it actually looks very engaging and very fun as well. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.